Welcome to another conversation. So today I'm joined by Theresa Khalil, who is a documentary filmmaker from. I think you were originally born in Gaza. Am I right?
In what?
In Gaza, did you mention in one of your videos?
I was born in Egypt.
Ah, where did I get Gaza from?
I don't know what.
I must have misheard a. What would say, what? Okay, whereabouts in Egypt?
In Upper Egypt.
Okay. I don't know where I got Gaza from then. Anyway, we'll smooth over that. So, you're a documentary filmmaker, and the reason I found out about you is because you made a video recently about antinatalism, and then I reached out to you, and I thought it'd be good to get Teresa on because I think it's good to speak to a wide variety of people who happen to be antinatalist, but if they do different things with their lives and stuff like that, because I think it's good to show the diversity of how people live their lives within one sort of community or whatever. So yeah, I guess I just started actually before we start with my questions. Are you able just to give a bit of like what's been your sort of journey through life to get you to where you are today?
You mean antinatalism wise or?
No, just generally, just generally.
So generally I was born in Egypt. I lived in the Arabic world and I'm a creative person, but I studied engineering and then I changed my career to graphic design
Mm,
and then I changed again to documentary film directing. And I was living in Egypt independently, which is not common for Egyptian women.
mm,
And then I moved to Europe to do my master's in documentary film directing. And I met my now husband, and now I live in Europe. And
mm.
I'm a content creator, so I have an Arabic channel. I have Unique TV is the
Yeah.
English one, which is starting now, and I do documentaries and video content.
Mm. How long have you been running your personal channel, which is in Arabic? How long have you been running that one?
2014 I started.
Ah, okay, so nearly coming up to 10 years.
Yeah.
So a decent chunk of time. Um, yeah. So how did you first like learn about antinatalism? When was it first the thing that sort of came into your mind? Was it like a natural thought you had, or did you discover it somewhere, or what's the story behind that?
um, it happened when I was about 5 or 6 years old, when I started just realizing or starting to have a conscious. So I wanted to know what is this, what we are doing here, and my
Mm,
mother told me um, that we all going to die, and that was a shock for me
mm,
because I realized also as a child that death is not something nice,
mm,
and and I've been thinking like I think a lot, I question a lot since I was a child. It's not just a stage. Like I know that children usually ask and question, but for me, it started from childhood and continued.
mm,
And I just the experience of life didn't make sense to me. Uh, and I told my mother that I will not have children. And she thought I was like, because many people say they will not have children, but then they have.
yeah, yeah.
But she told me, no, you will. When you get married, you'll change your mind. But I was so sure I don't want to have children,
Mm,
and that was also not easy for me to find my life partner
mm,
because, of course, in Egypt, this idea, so I wouldn't even mention it
mm,
because people take it as a threat. that I'm trying to, I don't know, delete life or cancel life, or
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like an attack on life.
Yeah.
And so, I wasn't able to share my thoughts in general. And then when online dating started, I was able to write in my profile that I don't want to have children, and you get this also, that now you have the whole world in front of you too.
Mm.
You can find, like before online dating and the internet, you were just limited to the people around you. But now you can, with this technology, you can have a variety of selection.
Yeah.
So, and I was always thinking about life. I started writing stories, and then the reason why I became documentary filmmaker is because I had this idea of, I want to, when I see someone old, I just can't stop questioning. Okay, now they are very close to death.
Mm.
How do they see this life experience? How did they explain it? How they feel now, and how was this life like? Now they will die and their life is done, is finished. I mean, if you are not famous, no one care about how was your life or
Mm.
what happened in your life. So that was the beginning. In 2005 I got this idea that I want to, like, go on a journey through people and how they explain life, how they understand it, how they live it the best possible way. And I applied with this idea to a scholarship for documentary film directing, and I was selected. And then that was just the beginning to put me on the way of documentary film directing. And I was making other documentaries until I feel confident enough to make this idea.
Yeah.
And then I did my master's, and during my master's I was like, the first film I wanted to make was called The Last Generation, and the idea was like, how life would look like if no one had children.
Mm.
And I was in Portugal at that time, and I found that they have low birth rate in Portugal, and some villages are now just old people. And I thought, that's amazing. I can go film there, and I can reflect my view of in the film. And I
Yeah.
pitched the idea, but they didn't like it at all. And I was struggling with my supervisor because he was trying to force me to do something else. And then I made a short documentary, It Goes On, which I didn't do The Last Generation. I just, It Goes On was just my view of life, my philosophy of how I see
Mm.
life. And the film, when I screened the film, I was attacked like, like, like I committed a crime, not
Oh,
that I
really?
made a documentary. And it was shocking for me because I thought I'm in Europe and I'm free to do whatever
Yeah.
ideas I want. There are freedom in Europe. But everyone was like, I had only one professor who was defending me. He was like, we don't have to agree with her idea, but the film is good. And everyone was like, no, life is beautiful. Why you're... And my idea was like, life is a circle of, or circles from birth to death, repeated circles from birth
Mm.
to death. But they were not happy about it at all. And I was just harassed about this film for a long time.
What was the name of that film?
It Goes On, and I will put it on the channel soon. So
Yeah.
it's a short documentary, 5 minutes, but I was just surprised how that even in the West,
Yeah.
that there's no acceptance of, that you say that I'm not happy with this experience
Yeah.
or criticizing it.
Yeah. Yeah. So where did you show this 5-minute documentary?
It was in the university.
Mm. So there was actually, was there like a did the university have like a film festival, or you just created a specific event for your documentary?
This one was filmed in the university to because you need to defend your film.
Mm, mm. Right.
And
I get
then
what
we
you mean,
had
yeah.
other screenings and other festivals and outside the university.
Mm. And do you think that you'll ever make The Last Generation, or you think it's just going to remain, you know, a dream?
So now what I've been working on is I don't call it anymore the last generation.
Yeah, yeah.
I call it now the documentary I'm working on and finally I was able to make is the Scrapbook of Life.
Mm, yeah,
And
yeah,
it's
yeah.
a series of documentaries. The first one was just released in May.
Mm,
And so this is the beginning because I found that I can't make this in one documentary. It has to be a series. And I will
mm,
also have a podcast because documentaries take a long time and I need to meet as much people as possible. So it will just be my journey to understand life, solve its mystery, and live it fully through the people I'm meeting from different beliefs. And
mm,
I'm looking for people who converted, who changed their belief, whether it's a religion or a philosophy or whatever, and how they answer the mysterious questions of life. Where did we come from? What is the meaning of this life? What will happen to us after we die? And I go through the person's timeline, life timeline, and I go into a conversation, like sharing how I see it, and I'm hoping that they will make me change my mind,
mm,
or maybe see life in a different way.
mm.
I will see. I'm not sure what will be the outcome of this documentary series.
So, how do you know how many episodes it has, or is it just going to be sort of in, you know, it's indefinite? You can just keep adding to it.
It's indefinite. But the first
Oh,
one now is out. I
yeah,
met a Chinese tea house owner here in
yeah.
Croatia, and he changed his belief to Buddhism, and he feel peaceful. He love life, and I thought, okay, maybe I can understand how is he, how
Mm,
come he's living in such peace and
yeah.
with this experience.
Yeah, that's my sort of. It's interesting that he found Buddhism because, like, I'm in London and there's a Buddhist center in London. So, and I've been there quite a few times. I've done some courses there, and to me, it's a really interesting way of seeing the world. I don't think, and I think it's interesting, but it's also, I think, probably useful in quite a lot of ways. The teachings of Buddhism. Um, but I don't think it would be something that if someone embodied, it would lead you to necessarily. Well, it might do for some people, but if you're an antinatalist and a Buddhist, I don't think it would lead you to necessarily love life, but it would lead you to be at peace. I think, like you used the word peace. I think that's quite like an accurate sort of way of describing what it could bring about for someone who, you know, like an antinatalist may have a lot more friction with life than the average person. And I think Buddhism to me seems like something that could alleviate some of that friction, you know, whilst you're still here. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it make you deal with suffering
Mm, yeah,
in a
exactly. Yeah.
better way. So
Yeah. And just going back, because we've actually like touched on quite a few questions that I was going to ask. So I just wanted to go back to when you were talking about, uh, you know, how antinatalism first came into your mind, and you said that it was because you you were talking to your mother and you were talking about death, really. And I watched a couple of your videos, you know, in preparation for our conversation, and I watched the one where you were talking about this, and it reminded me of a video that I'd seen before. Um, of do you know who Christopher Hitchens is?
no.
So Christopher Hitchens is like a quite a famous. He's dead now, but he was an English sort of author, social commentator, debater type person. But he was very famous for debating with people of different religions. And there's a debate he had that was, it was recorded, it was videoed, and there was a clip of him in that debate talking about he was using this analogy, this metaphor for death, and why he thought that many people find a religious understanding of the world to be quite comforting, because he said that death is it's like being at a party that you're really enjoying, and someone coming up to you and tapping you on the shoulder and telling you you have to leave. But like not just that you have to leave, but that the party will continue after you've left, right? And he was the reason he was using this analogy is because he was saying that the reason that many people find a religious understanding of the world comforting, although they may come to it for other reasons, but he says that he thinks one reason it's comforting is because often it provides an image of the world that there's an afterlife. So actually, you don't necessarily need to leave the party, or you're leaving the party, but you're going to an even better one when you
Yeah.
die, right? So
Yes.
that analogy he used, I found quite funny, but also quite interesting. And you reminded me of it when you were, talking in your video, because I think you can use a similar analogy for antinatalism or for procreation, right? In the this time you're not just at a party, but you've been forced to be at this party, right? And you didn't know the people who forced you to be at the party, but now you're at the party. If you don't enjoy it, or you'd have preferred just not to have been forced to the party, often people can marginalize you or demonize you, and you get labels like being depressed slapped on you. And even in some areas of the world, you would even get death threats, right, for not enjoying the party. Um,
But the thing
and
is, I
yeah,
can't call it a party because it's not that fun. You know?
yeah, no, exactly. Like, I think the many people do see it as a party, but I think the fact that they do often blinds them to being able to empathize with the people who don't see it as a party, which
Mm.
I see as a real problem, because um, it's fine to have your own view of the world, but as soon as you start imposing that on other people, then you've stepped over a line to which you have to have a very high level of evidence to be able to enforce that in someone else. But that is exactly what people are doing by creating other people, right? Is that I have this way I view life, and as part of that, I feel it's good to recreate it, and therefore by creating someone, you are imposing that view of life on them.
Yeah,
um
but I think what you're saying is too much thinking. What
yeah, yeah,
usually happens is that people just bring children to life without thinking, oh,
yeah,
I love life, I want my, no.
yeah,
They
yeah,
just have children because they get married, and that's what you do when you get married. You have a child, or it just comes by sex, you
yeah,
have
yeah,
sex
yeah,
and children come out.
yeah, yeah. No,
But
no, that's
when
true.
as now we have more conscious and we start thinking too much, we we try to make it like as if it's a thought about decision, or but it's usually not.
Mm.
Like usually when I meet someone who have children, really they never thought about it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I find that's the case a lot of the time. Is like it was they either didn't think about it, or when they did think about it, it was on a very superficial level that
Mm.
conforms to everything that society has just told them to think, rather than actually assessing the lay of the land as it stands and trying to come up with some sort of independent conclusion from that, right? They just sort of take the prepackaged ideas that society hands to them. One thing I also wanted to ask you about is you were saying that you started to think about this stuff very young. And when you were talking to your mother, she said that, you know, it'll probably be a phase, and, you know, when you're older, you'll probably change your mind, etc. What was your experience in general like with your parents, siblings, family, talking to them about this topic, especially at such a young age? Because I think that's not the, you know, it's not normal, for want of a better term.
But actually, the only one I was talking to was my mother, because I was close to my mother. And I think once I talked to my brother when he was, my brother is younger by 10 years. And before he gets married, I was like, I was talking to him about this idea, like, why would you bring your children to life? You see, you are already here and you see how it is like. And he said, well, do you want me to be stuck here alone?
Mm.
But I think he didn't mean it. He was joking, but it's like,
There's some truth in it as well.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I wasn't talking to. I already, because I think I'm an observer, so I see how people are, and I wasn't really. I don't like to make controversial conversations.
Yeah, yeah.
I try to avoid conflict.
Yeah, yeah.
So the only person, because my mother was open, she would hear me. She even if she disagrees, she doesn't have any violent reaction. So she was the only one I was sharing my ideas with, and I didn't speak to other people.
Okay, cool. So have you become more comfortable with talking about it since you know, since you were a child, or is this something you've always like? What made you make the video about antinatalism when you did?
Yeah. So no, this idea is every time I wake up in the morning, or most of the days, I just think, am I really here? Is it really that I'm here in life? And I know that not many people think that way. But I also wrote a book, which is in Arabic. It's it's called Came and Gone by a Life Passenger. That's my first book. And it's short stories, but all of it is my observations about life and how I see this life experience in different like short stories genres. So those are fiction stories, but inspired by life.
Yeah.
So I was always writing, but I write about it, but not in a direct way, or I talk about it, but not directly. And before I make this video, I made one before on my Arabic channel, because people usually ask me when you will have little Teresa, or you know.
Yeah, yeah.
So I made just a short video trying to answer this and show my view of life, but in a more artistic way, so that people don't get upset.
Yeah.
And so that was the first video. And then people commented a lot about why you're saying that. So I thought of making another video trying to answer some of the questions that I got on the first video. And then I thought, okay, maybe because now I'm starting to work on my English channel as well, so I thought I can make also an English version of it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm glad you made an English version, because I don't speak Arabic, so I wouldn't have found it if you didn't make it.
Actually, I was subtitling my videos, my Arabic videos, but I discovered that English-speaking people don't read subtitles much. So.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't read subtitles, or It could be that if the title of the video is in a different language, they don't necessarily think to click on it because they
No,
wouldn't
no,
know
I
that.
write English subtitled and I put
Ah,
the English
really?
word,
Okay,
but
well then it's just people
it
being
didn't work
lazy.
out
Yeah.
also.
Yeah, then it's just people being lazy.
Yeah.
Um, talking of things being in English, the book you wrote, is there an English version of that or is it just in Arabic?
No, so far it's in Arabic.
But presumably can people like buy it online?
It's yeah, it's on my website. Yes.
Okay, cool. Okay, I'll leave a just in case because I'm sure there will be people watching this that speak Arabic as well. So I'll leave a link in the description so people can go find it if they want to get it. Um, another thing I wanted to ask you about, which you mentioned in one of your videos, was you said that when you were 18, I think you said you were in Cairo, Egypt at this point, and you said when you were 18, you went to a book fair and you came across a book by someone called Omar Khayyam or something like that.
Omar
Uh,
Khayyam. Yes.
Khayyam. And
He's
yeah, can
Persian, I think.
Persian. Okay.
Hmm.
Um, can you tell us like who he was and what book you came across and you know why it was important?
Uh, well, the thing, Omar Khayyam was writing poetry. Was a
Mm,
poet in Persian, and and it's weird that his poetry was translated to different languages because people thought like they are really good. But I didn't read all what he wrote, but what caught my attention was this part where he was talking about how he was forced to come to life and he's confused here, and now he's forced to leave again. And what I got to know about Omar Khayyam is that he was because he saw that life is just temporary. He was
mm.
living it to the like he was drinking, he was
Oh,
doing all he was just like let me get as much as I can before I
yeah, yeah,
die, you know? So I don't agree with him in that sense,
yeah,
but I saw that he there is another person who can see or view life the way I do view it.
yeah.
So it was the reason why I mentioned it. It's because it's the first time I felt that I'm not alone.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And do you remember what the name of that specific poem was?
No, no.
I can maybe try and find it to link it in the description, but maybe afterwards I'll message you and try and see if you remember anything about like the specific wording of the poem, and then
Oh yeah,
I'll try and find it afterwards so that I can link it in the description for anyone um to
I
check
read
out.
it in Arabic, so
Yeah, yeah, no, I get what you mean. I would assume I mean, if he's been translated into several non-English languages, you would assume there's also probably an English translation
yeah.
as well. So um, I'm sure we'll be able to find it. So
Okay.
I'll have a look afterwards. Um, so I actually don't know if you're aware of this, but there in terms of the antinatalist community of all of the people around the world that would identify with this term, there's actually quite a large proportion of it in the Arabic speaking world. It's actually quite well represented in the Arabic speaking world. Um, and there are friends I have in the antinatalist world who know much more about these things than me. And they tell me that there are quite large groups online of Arabic speaking antinatalists on Facebook or on other places. Um, are you at all connected with this community or the antinatalist community in general, or are you are more separate and you just do your own thing?
I do my own thing.
Yeah. Have Have you ever like with all the traveling that you've done and the people you've met for the making the documentaries, have you ever actually come across any other antinatalists at all?
I met one during my love surfing journey, which
Oh,
or
really?
finding my soulmate or my life partner. He was from Iran. We
Yeah,
met online, and we started talking for about 2 weeks. And he viewed life exactly the way I see it.
yeah, yeah,
But then after 2 weeks of chit chatting online, he was like, Teresa, I feel depressed. And I said, me too.
yeah, yeah.
Because we were the same. And we view life like this temporary experience that just doesn't make sense.
Mm, mm.
So we were both depressed. We just realized that we can't be together.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And this actually made me change because at the beginning I was looking for someone who's like me. But then I realized that actually I want someone who doesn't see life the way I see it.
Mm. Yeah, often in a partnership, you need people to be slightly different, right? Because, like, I don't know, I guess it makes it more interesting, but also if someone just thinks exactly the same way as you, sometimes it just gets a bit weird. Like for me, I really value being able to um like talk about controversial or just random topics with the person I'm with. And if we both think the same thing every time, it's not very interesting.
Mm.
And I think if you're going to be with someone at least long term, you you kind of have to find the stuff you talk about interesting, right? Like,
And also different view of life because, for example, when I'm like one day I say something about how life is, I don't know, this doesn't make sense, and then my partner can add to what I'm saying
yeah,
and make me see something in a different way.
yeah, yeah, and also question you as well.
Yeah, I don't want
Yeah,
to be just only in my head.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
want.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, with with like your the films that you're making, or the series that you're making, um you said that you're going to, is it each episode is going to be centered around a different individual?
Yes,
Are you going to do one about yourself?
I started the first documentary. I started with my life and
Yeah.
how I view life, and explaining this journey, which is about to start. And then I go to meeting the first person, and that is the first documentary. And then
Right, okay.
what I got, how was this, like, how do I see it? Does it
Mm,
make sense? And also now I'm working on the second documentary,
yeah.
someone who changed his belief, because I'm looking for people who changed their belief, because I believe that those are the ones who question.
Yeah, yeah. Would you be interested in doing an episode on a person who's antinatalist?
Yeah, if he changed his belief to
Yeah.
something that, I don't know, he now, let's say, he have answers to the.
Yeah, because I was just thinking, like, people will be watching this, right?
Mm.
And maybe some of them will be, like, I don't know, presumably you do all the filming with them in person, so they'd have to be like somewhat near you, right?
No, some I film also online.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. Well, okay, so they can be anywhere then.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I
I
just
guess
have
if
one condition, that they are
yeah.
over 40, so they are a bit settled.
Ah, okay, that's interesting. Okay. So if there's anyone over 40 watching, um and they think that they could be an interesting subject, maybe, well, I don't want to speak for you, but like, yeah.
Yeah, I want someone who changed his belief, someone who's over 40, someone who think he has answers to the mysterious questions of life,
Yeah, yeah.
and so we can engage into a conversation.
Yeah, a discourse. Okay. Well, I'll leave that there. And like, if people, If anyone gets in contact, they get in contact. If they don't, they don't. Whereabouts have you traveled for your filming? Have you traveled sort of all over the world, or have you kept to a specific area?
Europe. We were traveling in Europe, Portugal, Hungary, Belgium.
And
And
where would
on
you
my
like?
own, I went to other, of course, France and
Yeah,
Italy.
yeah,
And I was more interested in West Europe.
yeah. So do you think that for the foreseeable future you'll stay in this part of the world to do filming, or are there other areas of the world that you'd want to go? Because obviously, if you want to talk to people who view the world in different ways, being able to go to different places in the world, you're going to find, people who think different things.
Yeah, but for example, my first film was with the Chinese, but he was in Croatia, so.
Yeah, true. That is true.
And as I said, I make what is called, I don't know if it's a thing, but what I do is online directing. So
Mm.
I direct the film online.
Right. So what does that exactly mean? So so what's online directing?
So I give instructions to the person to what do I need him to film, and then he sent me the
Right.
material, and then I edited. And
Okay. So the person who is the subject of the documentary will sometimes do the filming themselves, and you will.
yeah,
Okay.
and they don't
Okay.
need to have any previous experience.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I invented this or it's already there, but this is what I was doing
Yeah. Have
with few
you that
interesting subjects.
Yeah. Yeah, that's quite interesting because let's say if you were making documentaries and you were the person who had complete control over everything every time, you would probably get used to a certain way of doing it, right? You'd get into a pattern. But the way that you do it introduces an unknown element because you're giving instructions to someone, but at the end of the day, they're the one physically doing it. So they might alter it slightly differently. Have you had any interesting experiences where they've sent back interesting footage or things that they've done that you weren't necessarily expecting?
Yeah, for example, I have on my channel, Unique TV, I have Catherine. She was in America, in Ohio, I think.
Mm,
And she's not into, of course, filming or anything. It was her first time to do that. And she sent me a shot, which was a mistake. She was getting out of the car and the camera flipped upside down.
yeah,
And I saw this and I found it was really interesting.
yeah, yeah,
And so so if you see the film, many people will not think that this was a mistake. They will think it was like it shows how she's struggling or something.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It has great symbolism. Yeah, that's interesting.
So it depends on. I like editing, so the
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So in all of the people that you've come across in making these documentaries, and the different ideas that they hold or ways of seeing the world, um, what's been the person or the belief of way of viewing the world that you've come across that you found the most sort of intriguing or bizarre or captivating? Is there one you think back to and think that was just so different from how I usually operate, or it was so unexpected?
so the thing is, as I told you, I just started the first documentary. But of
Mm,
course, I was meeting people before, and uh, I always had this idea in my mind. So something that was bizarre. Uh, I find it bizarre that, but bizarre for me. I know that it's not
yeah,
bizarre for
yeah.
them. Um when people see that life is beautiful,
Mm,
because for me, it is like a beautiful painting with stains of blood on it.
mm,
So if I see this painting, of course, I will not be able to see how beautiful it is because of the stains of blood.
mm. Yeah, it's like everyone's looking at this painting, but the fact that they're focusing on the beauty is really weird to you because there's blood on it. And
Yeah,
surely we should
I
be
see
paying
both.
attention. Yeah,
I
yeah.
see the beauty and I see the blood, and the blood doesn't make me enjoy the beauty. So,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting way of explaining it. That's yeah, that's really I've never thought of explaining it like that, but that's actually a really good way of explaining it to people because it's very visual and people will understand it because even the average person, if you speak to someone who, doesn't think like you, they are one of these people who thinks, life is beautiful, all this sort of stuff. If you give them that imagery and said, imagine, you walk into a room and you see a painting on the wall and, it's a really well done painting. It's really amazing. It's really beautiful. But across it is a blood splatter.
mm,
Now, that doesn't change how beautiful the actual painting is, but there's also another bit of information you've got there, which is that something horrible has happened, right?
mm,
And obviously, in the case of life, it continues to happen. But in this analogy, it's like it doesn't really matter how beautiful the picture is. You kind of have to put that to the side and focus on the blood because that's the more pressing and urgent thing, right?
yeah, the most shocking.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting way of putting it. I like that. I've never thought about it like that before. Um I was watching you did a video called My Life Story in 3 minutes.
That's part of the scrapbook of life. This is the
Right.
beginning of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I watched that one and it was interesting because in it you you outline 6 questions that you've wanted to find the answer to. And I know that obviously you have only just started, you know, doing this series. And so you may not have as much information as you'd like to be able to answer these questions. But I wanted to ask you some of them
Okay.
to see like where you're at the moment. Not all of them, but I picked out 3 of them
Mm,
um, to see sort of like where your thinking is at on each of them, and then once you've done a significant amount of the series, maybe you'll answer the questions in a different way.
mm.
um so the 3 I picked out, well, I'll do them one by one. So the first one that I wanted to ask is, what is the meaning of life? So it's a big question. It's not maybe I should have started the whole discussion with this and just dropped you with the biggest question straight away. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, how you think about things at the moment, how would you answer that question?
The meaning of life for me. Well, at the moment, I just put meaning to my life because,
Mm,
uh, like, I hope in my journey, of course, I will get exposed to all kind of answers that people put to this, which I already have an idea about, like,
mm,
why. But for me now, I just put the meaning. Like, there is no assigned meaning.
mm.
I'm the one who assigned the meaning to life.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm actually I think I 100% agree with you. I'm reading a book at the moment which is a conversation between 2 philosophers on the meaning of life. And one of the philosophers, so I haven't fully read it, right? So I've read the the thoughts of one of the philosophers, but I've only just started the second one, so I don't know his as well. But the first one, he actually is an antinatalist philosopher, um, and he talks about the meaning of life in basically the same way that you're saying. He says that there is no ultimate meaning in his view. The meaning that we can assign to our lives is something that we construct, um, which can be like better or worse than there being ultimate meaning, right? It can be better in that you get to make it up. And so it can be, it can be much more achievable for you to align with it, because if you just exist and there's some standard of meaning out there, you might find it really hard to get to that. But if you're able to
Mm.
build it yourself, you can cultivate it out of something you enjoy doing.
Mhm.
um, but it can also mean that, you know, the fact that you have to cultivate your own meaning can also be worse, because some people might not have the capacity to do that. You know, we're all born differently, and some people don't have the mental fortitude or capacity to be able to cultivate a sense of meaning. Um,
I
so
think
I
you
found,
have to
yeah,
be creative to put
yeah,
your own meaning.
exactly, yeah, yeah. And I think some people are very good at that, and some people really struggle with it.
So that's why
Um,
people prefer to have assigned meaning.
Yeah, because then they don't have to really think about it. It's just
Yeah.
like, there's the meaning, it's already prepackaged for us. Um, yeah, it's an interesting one.
Mm.
Um, and I'm looking forward to reading the rest of the book, because I align with how that guy thinks. So I'm looking forward to reading the second guy who is going to think something else, and you know,
Mhm.
see if it's obviously going to conflict with how I view the world, but that, you know, that's a good thing, right? Like, I want to see how someone else
Yeah.
views the world. Um, the second question was, what will happen after you die?
What will happen after you die? So one of my quotes, I have
Mm,
quotes, is everything is possible, but nothing is for sure.
yeah,
So I like you ask me, I never died before, so or some people say that we died before, but I actually don't remember. So
yeah, yeah. I've heard people say that as well. Yeah,
so I believe that everything is possible, but nothing is for sure.
yeah. And maybe if we did die before, then this is what happens after you die. What we're doing now.
Actually, just yesterday I was watching a film
Yeah,
about it's from the 80s, some
yeah.
kind of comedy about two people died in a car accident and they became ghosts and they were just locked in their home
Mm,
and they don't remember what happened, they don't know why they are here, and they're just trying to do the best they can,
yeah, yeah.
and it's just like how we are here. So yeah.
What's the name of that film?
What's the name? I have to ask my husband. I can send it to you later
Yeah.
after.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Because I might watch it. It sounds interesting. Um, yeah. And then the third one was, um, how should you live your life? So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I should live my life the best possible way, and this is what I'm trying to. This is what I'm just recently started to try to discover. Uh, so yeah, how to be mindful, meditation,
Mm,
all the. So those are things that really had positive effect on my life for sure.
mm,
But I think there is more. So and also as time pass and we have more conscious people are just I think people now are living life much better than how it used to be.
mm. And when you say how it used to be, how do you mean? Do you mean like 100 years ago, or you mean like a few years ago, or?
Yeah, I think all the improvement happened just in the last few years.
Mm,
I think with the internet, how that information was available for everyone now.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah,
how you can discover things, and that I know people lived and died and they never knew about it.
yeah. You mean
So, for
they lived
example,
in? Yeah.
when you are an angry person, let's say,
Mm,
and you're just living angry, and some people just lived all their lives like that.
mm,
But if you know that, for example, that you can control your anger, you can work on yourself, and all
mm.
those things, those are new things. They were
Yeah,
not
yeah, yeah.
there before.
Yeah, I think definitely when you were saying about mindfulness and meditation, um, I think. in many ways, but there's a way relevant to this that I think like many of us suffer from, like a status quo bias. So one thing that a lot of people realize through meditation, not even necessarily just through doing it, but being told about what it can being told about what it can achieve, um, or what the results can be, is people often learn that we find it really hard to quieten our internal monologue. And this is one thing that people, so like, are you aware of Sam Harris?
Well, I heard the name. Yeah, I think I watched a few clips for him, but
Yeah. So he's like quite a famous, I don't know how you describe him. Like he's sort of like a social commentator slash, I think originally he was a neuroscientist, but he's become um much more sort of what would you call it, like popular for other things or whatever. But one of the things that he talks about a lot is meditation, mindfulness, and that sort of realm of stuff. And one thing he talks about is, he says that you know, we have like so much stuff at our disposal now where we can almost feel like we can do everything. You know, we've learnt about the stars, we've learnt about much of the life on the earth, we understand weather systems, all of this sort of stuff. We, you know, we have all the information we could ever want in our hand on our phone, right? But you ask anyone to sit down and try and not think of anything for 10 seconds, and they won't be able to do it. It's
mm,
impossible for them, because they are constantly having an internal dialogue or monologue in their head. And we feel like as humans we can control so much, we can change our environment and stuff like this, but we don't even have control over our own minds. And that's yeah, it's so interesting. I can't actually remember why I started talking about that.
but yeah, I mean, before when we were ignorant, so we couldn't separate our thoughts from ourselves.
Mm,
We thought that we are thinking, but now you can see that thoughts come to you.
mm. Yeah, and often spontaneously, you know,
Yeah.
like things just pop into your head, and you've no idea why they came into your head.
Mm.
Um,
So this is how,
yeah,
because I was talking about how now we are living a better life than before. So those things were not known before. I
mm,
mean, maybe I don't know if they maybe realized this in the Buddhist,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
because in the Arabic world we had no idea about such things.
yeah. No, it was the same in the Western world as well. I think Buddhism has become more well known in the past few decades, and it's been introduced to the West. And by the sounds of it, it's being introduced to the Arabic speaking world as well. And
Not as much.
no,
I mean, yeah, we
oh,
do. We started to have now yoga and meditation,
yeah,
but it's like for just the elite, you know.
yeah, 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 yeah. So it's
Most
not as
people
much like,
think of it as something threatening. It's like,
yeah,
oh,
a
it's a
different way of
different
doing
religion.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah, 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 exactly. Um, but I think, like, to be honest, I think Buddhism, because people call it a religion, and I understand why they do, but I think it's kind of unfair to call Buddhism a religion because it's so different to the traditional religions that we understand religion to be, like Christianity, Islam, Judaism.
Yeah.
It's so different from these religions that we're used to.
They say it's
In
more of a philosophy.
it's more of a philosophy. It's, you could even describe it somewhat as a tool. Like it's a you could describe it as like a tool of understanding yourself, your mind, and somewhat of the world around you. Um,
But I want to tell you that when I started also looking into Buddhism a bit, I found that actually they also have like hell and that you go to hell and the hell is like freezing and things like that. So I think it's not like I think the West took. what is
Yeah.
useful.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they left
Yeah,
the,
no,
the
exactly. That which is why I which is why I said I understand why some people call it a religion, because there are still parts of it which do resemble what we traditionally understand to be religion. But from my understanding of Buddhism, like the bulk of it, like the general sort of approach it has to existence and life seems to be quite sensible. But obviously with the caveat that there's a few things sprinkled in there that are a bit um do you know the term woo woo?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, a bit woo woo.
Yeah.
So yeah. Another thing I wanted to ask you about uh, is there's a very old philosopher who I think was from what is called Syria now. So obviously it wasn't Syria back then, but it's that area of the world called Al-Mari. And I've heard that he's very commonly known in the Arabic speaking world, not just Syria, but the whole of the Arabic speaking world. Are
I feel
you
like
aware
this
of
is
Al-Mari?
Almari. Maybe you are pronouncing
I
it
might be
weird,
pronouncing it wrong, and that's only part of his name. He has a longer name, like a that's not his full name. Um,
because
so
I never heard of
I
Al.
might be pronouncing it wrong. Actually, you know what I'll do
Ah,
is
Al-Ma'arri. Maybe you
yeah,
mean
yeah,
Abu Ala Al-Ma'arri?
yeah, yeah, exactly, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, of course. He's also antinatalist. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah, which is why I was quite sure I was bringing him up for that reason. I obviously just completely butchered his name. Um, so I apologize to him and everyone who speaks Arabic because they probably just like cringed at my
Yeah, Abu
pronunciation.
Ala Al-Ma'arri is also one of the people I was like, I felt related to.
Yeah, yeah. So how did you discover him? Because I've heard that he's taught quite often in schools. Or did you discover him independently?
I don't remember how I discovered him, but I just know that also his view was similar to mine.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
and I
Yeah, he
remember I made a website
mm.
when I started first making websites, and I called it abulalaandmari.com.
Oh really? And what was on that website?
It was me sharing my views and things like that, but I thought what to call it, and I thought,
Yeah.
not like the best is Abul Ala and Mari.
Yeah, 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 yeah. How yeah, I don't know if you'd know the answer to this question, but like, how well known is he in the Arabic speaking world? Is he like a household name?
Yeah, he's very known to the educated, maybe to
Yeah,
the
yeah,
educated people, but also he's like they think of him as someone who's controversial and
right.
they're not happy. I don't know, to be honest, how he
Yeah,
survived in his time.
yeah, I know because it's very impressive because he was I'm
Vegan.
yeah, he was vegan, he was antinatalist, and I'm not sure if he was atheist, but he was definitely critical of organized religion. Um, and yeah, he's a really interesting character because it's like he lived 1,000 years ago, and if he was alive today, he would be forward thinking today,
Yeah,
but he was alive 1,000 years ago. So it's
but he
and
was
he was
definitely,
blind. He
yeah,
did
he was
yeah,
definitely so lonely. They say
yeah,
he was like in two prisons, the prison of his eye, like being blind,
yeah,
uh, and his house because he didn't leave his house. He wasn't social, you know.
yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I might, I might try and find like someone who's an expert on Al-Amhari and like have a conversation with them to like fully, flesh out like who he was and all
Yeah,
of this
that
sort of
would be
stuff.
interesting.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, he's such an interesting character because he was so long ago, he was alive so long ago, but he's still seen by different groups today as like the godfather of their movement because I've often heard many vegans or animal rights activists people refer to him as like the godfather of veganism because he was a very early example of someone who was very clearly vegan. You know, his poem, it was called "I No Longer Steal from Nature," I think. I don't know if there's a different Arabic name. Do you know the poem I'm talking about?
No. What do you
So,
mean?
so Almari wrote a poem about veganism called "I No Longer Steal from Nature," and he talks about how we shouldn't kill animals, we shouldn't take their milk, we shouldn't take their eggs or fish. He even went
Even
as far as,
honey.
yeah, he even said honey, and he even said about wool and you know, clothing and stuff. Um, and that poem's quite well known in yeah, the vegan sphere, and people, you know, look up to him for being a, you know, a pioneer. Um,
And also, you
and
know what he wrote on his grave, or he asked to write on his grave?
yeah,
This what my parents did to me, and I did it to no one.
yeah, I've heard that one. I didn't realize that it was on his grave. Do you happen to know where his grave is?
No,
I don't
I
even know
don't
if it's
even
because
know
it's
if it
so, yeah.
exists.
Yeah, it's so long ago. I don't know if the grave would still exist, but I guess if he's that well known, then presumably there would at least be a symbolic grave somewhere.
I
It'd
don't
be
think.
interesting to visit. But yeah, it's probably quite far
As I
away.
told you, he was like against. I'm surprised that his work still exists. It wasn't burnt or anything like that. So.
Yeah, for what reason do you think the sort of anti-religion reason?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I'm surprised it hasn't been
I
yeah,
think
it
they
hasn't been
treated
burned.
him like someone crazy, and
Yeah. So he was either super forward thinking or we're all crazy and just looking back at him and thinking he was
yeah.
sane. Yeah. Um cool. I guess I had like one more question. So you mentioned that you were aware of Almari being vegan. Have you done any work on veganism, or has there been anyone that you have in any of your documentaries touched on this subject at all?
Yes, actually, on Unique TV, the first one of the first videos I made was about veganism.
Right. Well,
My
what
husband is vegan.
right. So you made a
It
video
was
about your husband, or just the
no,
topic?
no. It was about veganism, and also I was investigating what is it at the time because I was new. I met my husband. He's vegan. I wasn't. It's the first time I hear like, or I heard about it before, but I didn't focus much that it's a
Yeah.
lifestyle. So I met my husband, and I wanted to look more in depth into veganism. What is it? Like, is it really the right way to live or to eat? Because I care for healthy living.
Mm,
And so I met the Animal Friends organization here. They are advocating for animals. And I tried to understand why they think veganism is the right diet and things like that. And then I started searching for vegans in the Arabic world. I found one there. And so that
mm,
was the video about. But for me, before I met my husband, I was pescatarian because I stopped eating meat and chicken out of also sympathizing with animals and the idea that if I can't kill it, then why would I eat it?
mm,
Uh, but I was pescatarian because I could catch my own fish. I had no issues.
mm,
Of course, this is also some people don't agree with that. Like, why not fish? And why? What do you have against fish? But
mm,
that's how it came to me. It was I went because in Egypt you can go and if you want to have a fresh chicken, you go to the man and you select the chicken alive and then ask him to butcher it for you or
mm.
slaughter it for you.
Yeah. That's the way. Yeah.
So, so because when I started getting more into healthy living, I wanted to have fresh chicken. I didn't want the frozen one in the supermarket. So I went to the man and he showed me all the chicken he had. So I selected the fat one, and then he took it to slaughter it. How you say, slaughter or butcher?
Yes, yeah, either. You can say either.
Okay, to slaughter it. And then the chicken was so in panic. The whole chicken were in panic, all of them. And then I just realized what the mess I'm doing to those chickens. So I told the man, okay, I don't want. He said, oh, do you want another one? I wait you another one. I was like, no, I don't want.
Mm-mm.
And so that's how like, it wasn't that moment that I stopped eating chicken, but that's it built up to.
Yeah.
Then I stopped eating, and I was for 7 years I was pescatarian. And then I went back to eating meat and chicken because I discovered a diet called the GAPS diet. And the GAPS diet was like more advocate of eating meat and meat soup and bone broth and things like that. But now I'm like back to mostly being pescatarian as I.
Mm. And what was your husband's reason for being vegan? Was it the same as the animal group that you went to, or did he have different reasons?
Oh, my husband is so much advocating for animals. He was going out in demonstrations and to not even using wool, or he's a vegan, like
Yeah.
with.
And what have your conversations with him been like? Has it changed your view at all, or has it not really
No, we
impacted?
just decided not to talk about it because it makes problems. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, I can understand that. Like, I'm very much like your husband. So I'm vegan, and even this is a vegan t-shirt,
Yeah.
about saving animals and stuff. Um, and I do it less now, but I used to go and do the same demonstrations I probably think your husband does. Um, and but now I do more like online stuff and donate to different organizations and stuff. But
When you get older, you become more relaxed.
yeah, But the way that like I would see, and I know we've come up to an hour, so we'll close off soon. But when I was listening to you just talk, then the way that I tend to see it is like, you know how you were saying like, you weren't comfortable with the chickens or the maybe a pig or cow being killed, but you were sort of fine with the fish. Um, the way that I feel it's helpful for people to look at the situation is through not their own eyes, but the eyes of the animal, if you get what I mean. Because I think, and you've probably heard this from your husband already, but I think like that perspective very much comes from our own eyes. But obviously, when we look at it from the animal's eyes, we realize that obviously the fish doesn't want to be killed just as much as the chicken or the pig or etc. etc. But I'm sure you've had all these conversations with your husband and thought about
Mm.
these already. And
Yeah, but the way I see it, I don't see it from the animal's point of view. I see it from the big picture point of view.
mm,
So from my point, or how I see things
yeah,
from the big picture perspective, is that life is cruel, and you can see it in, even if humans didn't exist, you can see it. The lion eating the deer
yeah,
alive,
hundred
tearing it
percent,
off.
yeah,
Even here, I have spider catching the flies and eating. So, so life is cruel, and we are just part of it. So I
mm,
allow myself to be cruel. To if this guarantees me a healthy diet,
mm,
because my problem with veganism was when I looked into omega-3 and B12, and I found that you need to supplement.
mm.
And I'm more into natural living. So that's why I allow myself to be cruel, because I'm just part of life, and life is cruel.
Mm. And I
And that's
guess that's
why that's my objection about life, that it's cruel.
yeah, yeah. And I guess that's another that like brings us back to antinatalism, right? Because if life is cruel, we wouldn't want to create more of it. So it sort of brings back to antinatalism.
Yeah.
So yeah, those were all my questions. Apart from, you already said obviously you're working on this series at the moment. Um,
Mhm.
have you got any other ideas for future projects, or do you have anything in the future that you want to work on related to antinatalism, or what are you thinking about the future?
I think this will be my focus in the coming days. The scrapbook of life. I want to go on this journey, meeting people, trying to understand life,
Mm,
solve its mystery, and live it fully, and meet the different beliefs and cultures, and see if this will make me live life or see life in a different way. I would like to see life in a different way. But
mm,
so this, and it will be also, I'm thinking to accompany to the podcast so I can
yeah.
meet as much people as possible.
And presumably, obviously, the series is on Unique TV, which I'll put a
Yeah.
link in the description. Will the podcast be on there as well, or will that be on your
Yes.
website? Okay, it'll be on Unique TV. So I'll
It will be on this and on other
yeah.
podcast platforms.
Yeah, yeah. I'll put any links that we've mentioned, I'll put in the description. And also I'll email you, and then if you can send any links you want me to include as
Yeah.
well, I'll put them in the description for people to find. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on. It's been really interesting and nice
Thank
talking to you.
you. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, good. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how the series unfolds, and I'll put a link to the first episode so people can find that. And then they'll have the Unique TV channel, so they'll know where to find the future ones. But yeah, I'm looking forward to them coming out and seeing who you've been investigating and their
Yeah.
worldview and stuff. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on.